Jesus' name to thank you for America. We thank you for this unique nation, for this nation that was founded on biblical principles and the Judeo-Christian beliefs, dear God. We thank you, Lord, for your blessings upon this nation and for the freedoms that we have to gather here together in this Civic Center to listen to these candidates who are offering themselves to serve our city, our county, our state, and our nation even, God. So thank you. Thank you for these who come to do our interviewing tonight. And the moderator, thank you for our moderator. Thank you, God, for everything you've done to make this night possible. I praise you for each person here. Bless each family. Bless each of these candidates. God, may we speak the truth in love tonight. May we be forthright and honest. But may we be respectful, dear God, because I know that would please you. I thank you again for this great city, this great county that we live in. God, that we can live anywhere in America, but you put us here, and we're thankful to be a part of this congregation tonight, in this meeting tonight. And so I ask your blessings upon the proceedings tonight and tomorrow night, that you'll be with us through the meeting, and as we go to our homes tonight, bless us and keep us safe. Dear God, we thank you for your abundant love and grace that you shed abroad upon all of us. Bless us now, we pray. And God bless America, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. We remain standing because we're about to sing the national anthem. I'm going to ask my youngsters, these are my kids. I got married later in life, that's why I'm so old and they're so young. But when I finally got married, we started having babies, and there's the rest of the story right there. But we traveled as a family, and they sang and I preach, and they taught us in seminary nothing helps poor preaching like good singing. So I take the singing with me wherever I go. Of course, these kids hail from right here in Edgewood, Texas. And they sing from coast to coast, literally. We're heading out for Arizona Friday morning. We're at in California for 12 days. And they've been trying to get them to move to Nashville where the record label is. But I told them, look, I was born in Texas, I'm going to die in Texas right here in Zandt County. And I say big amen to that. These are my children, Keith, Cody, Christopher, and Katie. And I want them to, we should recognize our veteran son before you sing. So let's stand and honor our flag. We have a beautiful flag here we can turn to here in just a moment. God bless you and thank you.
Since everybody's standing, I would like every veteran in the house to please raise your hand proudly. If you've served this nation, would you everybody please recognize you? Thank you so much.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that
All right, thank you, Erwin family. At this time, I will turn the mic over to our main moderator and let them explain the decorum for the evening.
Thank you, Clay. We appreciate everybody being here. I did not see anyone taking a knee. Thank you very much. That's Van Zandt County. We can show them how we're supposed to do it. Okay, we're going to get started here in just a moment. If the U.S. Senate candidates would come up and sit at the table right behind me here. There should be two here. If you would come sit up here. Next will be the congressional candidates. After the U.S. Senate candidates go up to the platform here, then the congressional candidates should sit at this table so we can keep everybody queued up. My name is Bob Reese. I've been in Republican politics for over 50 years. I started very young. I served in a number of capacities, including being your Republican nominee for the state Senate District 2 in 1996, interim executive director of the Republican Party of Texas in Austin on several occasions, and have worked in helping build the Republican Party here in Van Zandt County for nearly 26 years that I've been here, and along with many other people, and really appreciate the opportunity to serve. To my right here is Ken Hilton. I'll let Ken introduce himself.
My name is Ken Hilton. I work with Mercy Ships. I'm husband of Jennifer, and I have 4 children, and I'm a blessed man.
And to my left, Brad Blakemore.
Brad Blakemore with the Van Zandt Newspaper Group. It's a pleasure to serve and be a part of this forum. We've done it for a few years, and I look forward to it every time we do it. It's a great group of honest people, trustworthy. I think that the forum, I think everybody's going to be very pleased with the outcome of the forum tonight, so thank you.
Thanks, Brad. As you sit down. Okay, to give everybody an idea of how the forum's going to work tonight, so it's clear for the candidates as well as for y'all in the audience. The guidelines and the purpose of the debate here in the Republican primary is to create a format that allows the citizens to learn more about the candidates and who is best qualified for the office sought and matches the ideals and tenets of the Republican Party platform. The Texas Republican Party platform is 32 pages long. I should encourage you to ask the candidates if they've read the platform and what portions of the platform they may or may not agree with, and talk to them about that. We will not be doing that tonight. There is not time. The party platform is developed from the grassroots up, and it starts at the caucus, precinct caucus meetings, usually at 7:15 after the polls close on March the 6th. And so if you want to participate in that process, be there at your voting box. For this debate, the tenor and demeanor of the debate, it is expected that each candidate will remain within the time limits set for the debate, maintain professionalism and civility throughout, refrain from name-calling, innuendos, and speculations, and will base answers on documentable facts and figures that can be verified post-debate if requested. During the questioning sequence, it is expected that the audience will refrain from cheering, booing, clapping, or otherwise distracting from the time and process of keeping on schedule and obtaining as much information about each candidate as possible. After each opening and closing statement, the audience may applaud each candidate. So I hope you understand that. Not during the questioning period, but after the opening and closing statements, you may hoot and holler. The sequence that we will be doing the candidates is based on a drawing that was done at Brad's office by a non-interested staff member witnessed by panelists for the order of opening statements and initial question sequence. Questions will then alternate as to who is asked first. The closing statements then will be in reverse order from the opening statements. The opening statement, each candidate has 2 minutes for an opening statement. Unopposed state-level candidates will have 3 minutes for a combined opening and closing statement with no questions asked by the panel. The questions that will be asked by the panel came from the citizens who submitted them through a variety of means, as well as research that the panelists did in advance. There will be 4 to 8 questions asked in each race. They'll be directed to the candidates from the panelists with the format of general questions rotating between the candidates as to who answers first. A candidate has 1 minute to answer a question, and if the question is asked for all the candidates to answer, they will each answer in order and have 1 minute to give their answers. After all those answers have been given, then rebuttals may begin from the other candidates, limited to 30 seconds each, and additional rebuttals at the discretion of the moderator with time permitted. If a candidate would like to respond or rebut, they should raise their hand to be recognized at the direction of the moderator. Closing statements will then be 1 minute each, in reverse order from the opening statements. Are there any questions? Okay, everybody got that? Thank you. So we'll begin with our U.S. Senate race, and I believe we have Stefano. Do we have Mary Miller? Is Mary Miller here? Mary Miller? Stefano, come on up, grab a microphone. You'll be at this number 1 right here. Thank you very much. You have 2 minutes for your opening. You have 3 minutes total. Is this mic hot?
Flip it on, right in the middle.
Hello? All right. My name is Stefano Di Stefano. I'm the son of an Italian immigrant, and as you can tell, I'm the candidate so nice they named me twice. So I'm the son of an Italian immigrant, and I'm running against Ted Cruz. And people sometimes they say, "Why are you running against Ted Cruz? Why not city council? Start your political career, you know, at something lower." And I say, well, I don't really want a political career, but I'm fed up because I don't think our senator is representing Texas very well, and I don't think that our Congress is representing the country very well or getting anything done. You know, you look around, and we have a whole series of problems. Maternal mortality is up, life expectancy is down. Our infrastructure is crumbling. Our public education system is falling behind the rest of the rich countries in the world, and we've abandoned our vocational school system. In Texas, we need money to dredge the ports in Corpus and in Houston, and we need a lot of money for infrastructure for flood waters after Harvey. Our healthcare system is broken. Our immigration system is broken. There's a whole series of problems, and I haven't heard a solution over the past 6 years from my opponent. And so I'm running because I want to propose some solutions. I have some ideas, and I don't think it's enough to stand around and throw stones but not come up with a solution. It's not enough to shut the government down. Once you get the microphone, you have to have an idea so that you can make the sausage, so that you can negotiate and be pragmatic and come up with a solution. And I'll give you the example of the State of the Union. President Trump came out in the State of the Union and said, I want to do a bipartisan immigration deal. The next day, my opponent came out and said, no deal, amnesty done, DACA, we're not going to do anything. I'm completely against any deals. To me, that's not representing Texas very well. In addition to that, my main 4 items on the agenda are to work for NAFTA, because Texas benefits from NAFTA. It's to work for the energy industry, as opposed to the coal and ethanol industry. It's to reform our immigration system, so that we have a legal system that encourages people to follow the legal path, instead of encouraging them to use the black market. And finally, because everyone stood up here and everyone clapped for our veterans, and that's wonderful, we need to honor our veterans. But unless we're ready to spend federal money on our veterans, and that includes Medicaid, because 70% of vets, when they're not using the VA, they use Medicaid. And unless we're ready to spend on those, on our vets, we're not actually honoring them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure you gave me 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. I'm going to keep it. That's all right. Okay, if the congressional candidates would start making their way to the end of the platform. No, not without an opponent. Yeah, sorry. Yes, thank you. And after the congressional candidates, we're going to have land commissioner, should be Rick Range, if he could come to the table behind me. And if our U.S. Rep candidates would come up on the stage, Danny Campbell will be at number 1 here. Then David Williams is number 2. Bunny Pounds at number 3. Sam Dean at number 4. Jason Wright at number 5. Kenneth Sheets at number 6. Charles Lingerfeld at number 7. And Lance Gooden at number 8, if they're all here. And y'all are going to share microphones, so be nice. If you get one in between each, every 2 of y'all share one. Is this mic hot? Is it up, volume up? Okay, thank you. So we'll begin. This is the order in which the drawing was held for our U.S. Congressional District 5 candidates. Each one will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and we'll start with Danny Campbell and then go down the row.
All right, so I'm going to start off with a question. Who's tired of politicians? I'm really surprised we have no response to that question. So Washington is full of politicians, and they're not full of servant leaders. My name's Danny Campbell, and I'm running for the U.S. House 5th Congressional District seat. I'm a former Army infantry officer. I've deployed overseas. I've led troops in combat on over 150 combat patrols in Iraq. I'm tired of seeing Republicans, in name only, perpetuate a big government solution around the world. I'm tired of seeing Democrats doing the same thing but with a welfare state domestically. I have a simple approach. Somebody tonight, Greg and Kay, they asked me, what are you going to do for me? And I said, well, the federal government needs to get out of the business of doing things for people. That's not what it was intended to do. It's intended to protect the homeland and protect the citizens. That's it. I have a bare bones approach to government. I'm going to be the Ron Paul-esque candidate for this U.S. House race. The free market is something we should rely upon. We need to get rid of regulations. I believe individuals have freedoms that were bestowed to them by God, not by government. Government's there to protect those rights, not grant the rights. I stand for the Constitution. I'm a real political outsider. This is my first time to run for office. And I'm here to bring fresh ideas. So on March 6th, I ask you to vote for Danny Campbell. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Yes. Good evening, Van Zandt County. My name is David Williams, and I also am a congressional candidate for District 5. A little bit about me. I was born and raised right here in East Texas, in Tyler. Traditional, conservative, Christian family man. Married a local girl from Winona, Texas. Been married about 17 years. And what made me want to do this is I thought back to the country my parents and my grandparents gave to us. And I look around and I'm watching the news, and this is not the same country that I inherited from my generation before me. Looking at my daughters, we have 3 daughters, 9, 9, and 8, and I want to give them a country that we can all respect and appreciate. And we've got to do a turnaround. We're headed on the right track with a turnaround. We've got to need congressional and Senate representatives who are going to be able to support the common sense agenda that we're headed for now. I'm a military veteran. I served a total of 18 years, 10 of it as enlisted, and 8 of it as a nurse corps officer. I had multiple deployments as well. I've got a lot of really good ideas. I've got over 20 years in healthcare and healthcare finance, formal education in both of those areas, plus real-world experience. And probably have more real-world experience than most everybody up here in wisdom, except for maybe Charles. He's got a few years on us. But I've got a lot of really good ideas to how we can immediately start turning around and making things better for all of us, so we can be optimistic about our future and future generations. Thank you.
Next will be Bunny Pounds.
Hello, Van Zandt County. Thank you guys so much for coming out tonight and caring about your country enough to be an informed voter. It really means a lot to all of us. I am Bunny Pounds. I'm a wife of 21 years, a mother of 2 adult children who are serving God in Christian ministry. And I have started 2 small businesses with my husband. We built a pest control company up to 15 employees and $750,000 gross income, and then launched into the restaurant business in Dallas with a little wrap franchise called Roly Poly Sandwiches, if you've ever eaten there by SMU. Then when I was 29 years old, I caught the political bug listening to Laura Ingraham on talk radio and got infatuated with the idea that me, just a simple woman, could make a difference in America. I went to my first state convention, got hooked, became a precinct chair in Garland, started putting Jeb Hensarling yard signs all over my neighborhood. And then I went back to school at 29 and finished my political science degree at Dallas Baptist University, graduated magna cum laude when I was 32 while homeschooling my kids. In the last decade, I've had the privilege of serving Congressman Jeb Hensarling as his campaign manager. It has been an honor to serve a man that fights for limited government and takes it to our own party when he needs to. I'm the only person endorsed by Texas Right to Life in this race because I've stood for the unborn for 25 years. I've been in the trenches fighting against Planned Parenthood and believing that we need to protect life at every level. I'm so happy to have Congressman Hensarling's support. I've been in the trenches. We need a movement conservative in this race that has fought for the conservative movement, and I've done that with establishing my firm and fighting for our candidates from Tyler all the way to Fort Worth. We need somebody that stands up for limited government and will stand up against federal encroachment. And that is why I'm in this race. And it's been a privilege to serve the 7 counties of the 5th District of Texas. And we are running a 7-county race here. And thank you so much of you that are in this room that support me. Thank you so much.
Next is Sam Dean.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. My name is Sam Dean, and I'm from Canton, Texas. I was born and raised right down the street, and I live here still. I grew up here. I was an Eagle Scout. I was a senior at Canton High School when 9/11 happened and decided to go to West Point. I got it. Ralph Hall gave me my nomination to go to West Point. Got there, studied hard, graduated in 2006. George W. Bush gave me my diploma. Went to Fort Benning. Became an Army Ranger, went to airborne school, went to Fort Hood, Texas, met my platoon, took my platoon to the mountains of northeastern Afghanistan, and I led them for a year against Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We had a rough deployment, we lost some guys, but we made a lot of improvements as well. Upon returning, came back to Fort Benning, was an instructor for the new infantry officers, and got out of the Army in 2011, moved back here to Canton to start my businesses. I own CrossFit Van Zandt's located right down the street. We have 5 full-time employees. We have a location in Athens. We have Van Zandt Coffee, and we have another company called GP Delta Investments. When Jeb Hensarling announced his retirement, the guy standing in the back of the room, Sam Brown, he's my campaign manager. He's my classmate from West Point. He's also a wounded warrior. He called me and said, the country needs you. You need to step up. I'm not going to sit by and watch the country fail our veterans. I'm not going to sit by while the country dissuades our teachers from teaching and dissuades our small business owners from doing well. I'm Sam Dean, and I'd appreciate your support. Thank you.
Next, Jason Wright.
Like so many of you, I am first and foremost a grassroots activist. Now, for most of my adult life, as a grassroots activist, I was working to make sure that we got constitutional-loving, liberty-minded conservatives elected to office. And through that grassroots activism, I helped found a group called Grassroots America, We the People. It was during that time that I later decided to take that activism to another level, in which I became a city councilman in the city of Tyler. It was later that I met a guy named Ted Cruz, and I volunteered and I worked to make sure that he got elected to the United States Senate. Then once he did that, I went to work for him, representing you, along with 31 other counties, on behalf of Ted Cruz. And then one day I'm sitting in my office minding my own business and I get a phone call. Someone was asking me to run for Jeb Henscheling's seat that he was vacating, to which I said no. I don't think that's the right thing for me to do. And after talking to Senator Cruz as well as a lot of other folks, and looking my daughters in the eye and telling them no and having them look back at me and go, Dad, why? Now you got to understand something. Since they were very little, on Independence Day, every day they get a speech about the miracle that is the United States of America. They get a lecture on this document that we call the Constitution of the United States, that is divinely inspired and is the most incredible governmental document ever delivered. And I was telling them that I was running from the fight, and I couldn't reconcile that. So here I am, asking you, please allow me to take our constitutional loving, limited government principles, and grassroots conservative activism to Washington, D.C. as your United States Congressman. Thank you.
Next, Charles Lingerfeld.
I'm Charles Lingerfeld, and I'm from Dallas. I'm a businessman. I have a barbecue and catering business. In 1972, I got involved with Senator John Tower in his campaign, who, by the way, when he started winning against Democrats, other Republicans realized that they could win. It's kind of like Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile. When he broke it, other tracksters saw that they could run the mile less than 4 minutes too. And when I was 14 years of age, I made a very good decision to take up the cross and follow Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and I've been following him ever since. I'm a Christian constitutional conservative. I've studied the Constitution since I was in the 7th grade. One of the characteristics you will find about me is I'm faithful to God, family, and my country. That ain't gonna change. No one in Washington, D.C., no one anywhere else is going to make me change that faithfulness factor and principle in my life. I've built this campaign on 4 pillars that deal with me and who I'm about: experience, maturity, honesty, and integrity. And I will not allow the youth and inexperience of those that are younger than me in this campaign to intimidate me in any way. I'm your candidate for U.S. Congress, and I want to represent you against the Democrats and the people that are selling this country down the drain. We are about to lose America, and we probably already have lost our federal government. And I intend to go up there and take it back from those dogs and bring it back to the people here in Texas. I deserve your vote. I think I do, because I follow God first. I love my family, been married to the same woman for over 50 years. Thank you, ma'am.
And Charles, you may come on down one more. You don't have to have that gap in there, so, unless you're comfortable there.
I like number 7.
It's the perfect number, isn't it? Okay, now we'll begin our questioning, and we'll start with Brad asking the first question of our House candidates.
This question, everybody hear me fine? This question is for all candidates. Please explain which one of the following Texas Republican members of Congress you most align with politically, and how would you demonstrate that in office? Louis Gohmert, Sam Johnson, Lamar Smith, or Pete Sessions?
Starting with Mr. Campbell.
Out of those 4, I would say Louis Gohmert. I believe he's a true conservative. I think he aligns with conservative values. I don't know how far you want me to explain into that, but that's my answer.
Mr. Williams.
Well, having met Louis Gohmert on several occasions and having several mutual friends and business associates, I would have to concur. Louis Gohmert is while he's not perfect, and I don't agree with every single thing, tremendously support most of the actions that Louis Gohmert has, the way he's voted for many things.
Ms. Pounds?
I would be a combination between Louis, Sam, and Jeb Hinserling. And I'll answer that question by saying we have to communicate with a lot of power. We have to fight for our values. We also have to lead by writing legislation and moving things through the process. I think Sam Johnson has done that well with his Social Security Act, which I would absolutely support. And he's got amazing ideas and has been a hero in this country. So between Sam and Louis, I'm right there between the two of them with their leadership styles.
Sam Dean?
I would say Louis Gohmert, because he's got the best conservative score and record, better than Jeb Hinserling. And definitely not Pete Sessions, because I think Pete Sessions lives in Florida and tries to represent Dallas.
Mr. Ryan?
Well, I would say unequivocally it's Louis. And here's the reason why. It's not just because of what Louis does in front of the cameras and on the House and the floor. I've had the privilege of being Louis' city councilman. I've gone to church with Louis for years. And the thing about Louis Gohmert that makes him who he is what he does when no one's looking. This is a man of impeccable integrity. You can trust him when he's in front of the cameras and when you're not seeing him at all to be doing the right things before the eyes of God. And that's why I would say far and away, Louis.
Mr. Lingerfeld?
I know them all. I've shaken their hands. I helped Jeb Hinserling win in 2002. But Louis Gohmert is #1 in my book. In January 2016, I was in his office. I went there to talk with him about the Kurdish Peshmerga and how we are to be supporting those boots on the ground over there in northern Iraq. I also wanted to talk to him about a few other things. He wasn't there at his office at first, but he came in and shook my hand and looked me in the eye and allowed me to take some photos. The other guys did as well. But I have a respect for Congressman Louis Gohmert that I can't explain to you. It's trust. It's, I believe he's an honest man. He's constitutional. I said that day, Louis, I wonder why you haven't announced that you're running for Speaker of the House. He said, well, I'm contemplating, praying about it. He did.
Thank you. Does anyone care to rebut any of the answers given of any of your other candidates? Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Ken.
This is to Mr. Williams. Well, Mr. Williams is first. But it's for everybody, so listen up, okay?
Okay.
What will you do to promote the pro-life cause in the U.S. House?
That's a good question. I am adamantly pro-life supporter. I will be willing to immediately take a lead and try to, using Article 3, Section 2, to remove the Supreme Court's jurisdiction over that and restore it to state decisions. I believe that we have enough conservative-leaning states or strong conservative states that we'll be able to, at the state level, get enough popular support for restricting abortions in the state. And my approach on it is we might not win every battle of every state, but we will overall win the war.
Ms. Pounds?
Yes. I have 3 priorities when it comes to the pro-life agenda. First of all, I want to make sure that the Hyde Amendment stays permanent forever, that we never put another dollar into federal funding of abortions. One of my dear friends is Bob Hyde, of Congressman Henry Hyde's son in Dallas. That is a very important issue for me. Second thing is we need to completely defund Planned Parenthood, where no dollar goes to their general funds, so they cannot help fund abortions any other way. And then we need to make sure that we have a bill that protects people that have a consciences, like our justices of the peace that need to perform traditional marriage, that we make sure our pharmacists are protected if they don't want to give the abortion pill, those kind of things. So I want to make sure that we're pushing the envelope on that in every realm. And that's why I'm endorsed by Texas Right to Life.
Mr. Dean?
I'm 100% pro-life, no exceptions, so I'll do my job, I'll read the bills, and I'll vote accordingly.
Mr. Wright?
First of all, I will always push any legislation that establishes that life begins at conception. We have a candidate in this race right now who helped defeat the Schaefer Amendment. The Schaefer Amendment would have closed a loophole allowing those children who are deemed to have a disability to be aborted after 20 weeks. Matt Schaefer tried to stop that. However, we have a candidate in this race that didn't show up to face you tonight who sided with Byron Cook to table that amendment. Now, due to a child's imperfection, that child can be killed after 20 weeks. If I ever see any piece of legislation like this in the U.S. House, I will do everything in my power and I will fight to my dying breath to make sure that all life is appreciated, because let me tell you something, folks, none of us are perfect. We all deserve a chance at this incredible thing called life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that we have guaranteed in our Constitution.
All these other candidates talk about being pro-life. I've attended all the pro-life rallies in Houston, Austin, San Antonio, Waco, and Dallas for the past 20, 25 years, and I've not seen any of them at a pro-life rally. We took 3 buses down there and 3 different trips filled with 40 some odd people. I raised the money to take the buses down when we were standing in the hall for House Bill 2, I believe it was, that was going to pass. And I got spat upon when I was in the hallway, and a Democrat, a little woman, followed me because I wanted to go down at the front of the line and just check and see who was at the front of the line. I didn't want to cut the line, and she took a photo of me when I got down there. Doesn't matter to me. I'm going to stand for life, and I already have a piece of legislation that I've written myself to support life and destroy that abortion amendment.
Mr. Campbell.
So with what Jason just said about one of the candidates, now we're down to 7. If life is actually important to you, then we're down to 7 candidates. And that one candidate's not here. First off, just like Bunny said, 0 funding, 0 federal dollars go to abortions. That's the first step. The second step, it's getting the right people in Congress. It's getting people like us on this stage in Congress, but not just in the 5th District. It's about getting people like us in Congress across different states. And so you know what that takes? That takes money, and that takes effort, and it takes resources, and it takes time. So we need to ensure that we have the funds for the campaigns, for the candidates that are much like ourselves, to ensure that we have the right people in Congress to push forward pro-life legislation and a pro-life amendment. Thank you.
Any rebuttals?
I would just like to say that I heard the female candidate before say that Jeb Hensling was her hero. But I have been disappointed that Jeb voted for the omnibus bill, and in that bill it had funding for Planned Parenthood. And I called his office and objected to that.
Any further?
May I say that I would have voted differently on that bill? Thank you.
And how would you have voted?
I would have voted against the omnibus bill. I'm not Jeb Hensling, but thank you.
Any others? Okay, our next question. This will go to all the candidates, starting with Ms. Pounds first. And this is a long, run-on question. Multi-part. Do you support the current Republican tax plan that was recently passed, and what, if anything, would you want to see done differently? Also, how would you end the ongoing use of continuing resolutions versus adopting a true workable budget? And do you support bringing back earmarks to support local community projects?
Okay, yes, I support the tax plan. We did incredible things by lowering the corporate tax rate so that we could be competitive with the world. As we know, we got our individual tax rate cut and our pass-through tax rate for all small business people, so there was a lot of great things in that. What I would have done different, got rid of the death tax, increased the exemptions on the AMT tax. I am not for bringing back earmarks, absolutely not. As you know, Congressman Hensarling fought against that for 10 years. I think that is a ridiculous idea. And what was the fourth thing, Bob? I'm sorry.
Continuing resolutions.
Continuing resolutions. We need a spending limit amendment to the Constitution, or we need a balanced budget amendment, one of the two. But we've got to actually balance the budget and have real budgets. Thank you.
Mr. Dean?
I think it was overall a good thing, but I would have changed it. We got a tax break, that's all fine and dandy, and the biggest deal, we got rid of the individual mandate, which was unconstitutional. But we didn't get rid of the employer mandate, which a lot of small businesses out here struggle with the number of employees they have. They have to have under 50, like especially these restaurants and stuff around. I talked to a guy out in Palestine that struggles with that. Also, a full repeal of the windfall elimination provision should have been added into that. And that is where if you're a teacher, a firefighter, or a police officer, and you get a government pension, and you have a side job because you don't make enough money, you pay into Social Security and the government doesn't let you get it. There's no such thing as government money, okay? It all comes from somebody else. So if you put a dime into Social Security, you should get that back.
Mr. Wright, just a moment. Audience, if you would, remember, we're trying to get through as much as we can, save the applause or other for their opening and closing statements, okay? Thank you very much, Mr. Wright.
So first of all, I did support the tax reform bill. As a matter of fact, 4.2 million people received a bonus of at least $1,000, which equated to $2.5 billion. Now, Nancy Pelosi calls that $2.5 billion just crumbs. Well, I don't know about y'all, but that's a lot of crumbs to me. However, I think we need to go further. I think we need to continue to turn up the heat and push for a flat tax and a total abolishing of the IRS. Second, with regard to continuing resolutions, I believe we need to fight for a convention of the states because I think it's the only way we're going to efficiently get to a balanced budget amendment. We need to have those who are courageous enough to stand up and say our priorities must be represented or we will shut down the government. We're not afraid to do that. So, and was another one, Bob? Did I get those? Earmarks. Hell no, we don't need earmarks.
Mr. Lingerfeld?
Pardon his French. Yes, I am for the tax plan. It's put money that should never be going to the government in the first place back into pockets of the American citizens and the American people. My daughter, my oldest daughter who lives in Forney, asked me to come over last week and do her taxes. You can't tell your daughter no, so I go over and do her taxes. And according to the new tax plan, she got back $1,000 more than what she would have because her income increased and her dad looked out for her. No continuing resolutions. We need a balanced budget, and we need to force Congress to balance the budget or get out of the way. I'm a football coach, retired football coach, and I taught my players, you know, you're part of steamroller. Either play hard, head on, or get out of the way. Be a part of the pavement or the steamroller, and get the job done. No earmarks.
Mr. Campbell.
So I supported the tax plan 100%. My only issue with it was that it didn't go far enough on the individual tax rate. I'm for a flat tax, which is a 10% individual tax rate, and then a decrease on the corporate tax from what it is now after the tax decrease down to 18%, between 16 and 18%. I've signed a pledge to get rid of the death tax. I signed that today, actually. Continuing resolutions, I'm actually in line with Rand Paul's plan that he submitted last week, where if we're going to have continuing resolutions and they result in a government shutdown, every agency across the board has a 1% reduction in their budget for the following year. In earmarks, I'm against them. Although I said I'm a Ron Paul candidate, I don't agree with adding earmarks and then voting against them. I wouldn't add the earmarks in the first place, and I'd vote against them. And I'm for a balanced budget amendment as well. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
All right. I was very excited about the tax reform legislation that went through. As a former corporate person, many of us up here have started businesses, have been entrepreneurs. I built a business with over 200 employees from a startup with an annual budget of $25 million. So I understand about operating within a balanced budget. It's very important, and we as employers have to be responsible enough to be able to operate within our budget, and I think we should be able to have a balanced budget amendment at the federal level. Just if this is our money that they're out of control spending. But as far as the tax plan, as Sam had mentioned, the WEP, which was the Windfall Elimination Program, I do support the removal of that. I'm an educator as well in the TRS system. If there's any teachers out here, you know what that is. So I do support that, eliminating the Windfall Elimination Program. If you've had another job prior to and paid into Social Security, you should be able to entitle to get the same amount for anybody else that put in there. As far as earmarks, I'm completely against earmarks.
Do we have any rebuttals or comments? Mr. Dean?
Yeah, make no mistake, it's the biggest threat to our national security is our debt. We just passed one of the biggest spending bills in our history. Like, what are they doing up there? So, if you look at Al-Qaeda's, international terrorist plot against America, it's death by 1,000 cuts. So things like the Afghanistan war that's still going on 17 years later, and it should have ended when we killed bin Laden. These things need to stop.
Mr. Campbell?
To add on to that, I don't think the national debt is our biggest threat to national security. I believe that our entanglements within every part of the globe is our biggest threat to national security. This is something that Ron Paul termed blowback. And this is something that we have to watch out for, and it's something it's going to rear its head, and it has reared its head, but with the expansion of terrorist cells. So I think that's actually what the biggest threat to national security is.
Any others? Mr. Lingerfeld?
I believe our biggest threat to national security is illegal immigration and the DACA situation that we have over here now. We don't even know whether it's 700,000, 800,000, 900,000, 1 million, 1.2 million. We don't know how many are here illegally. So I'm proposing that they need to go to the immigration department and register so that we can determine how many are here illegally. They don't want to live by our system. Get the hell out.
Pardon your French.
Okay. Next question.
I'm a Christian conservative.
It was not in the guidelines. We'll remember that next time. Brad, next question.
This is for all candidates. Mr. Dean, you'll go first. Regarding immigration issues, please explain your detailed plans of protecting our borders, including the wall, your position on sanctuary cities, and your position on the administration's recent proposal to transition 1.8 million illegal residents to citizenship.
Okay, immigration is a great thing, but it's not a great thing. It could be the worst thing ever when we don't know who's coming in. And the job of the federal government is to protect our country. And if we don't know who's coming over the border, we don't even have a country. So I'm for a wall where we need a wall. And I'm for using technology, our military power, to stop illegal immigration now and to start it over the right way. I always talk about how would we do it if we could start all over? Okay, everybody get out of the country. How would we all come back into the country? We do it the right way. We document it. If you sneak into Disney World and they catch you, what happens? Yeah, they kick you out. Or they make you start paying, right? And that's what needs to happen. I'm not for sanctuary cities. What was the last part of
the transition?
1.8 million. If that's going to fund the wall, like these people, I gotta stop.
Mr. Wright.
So first and foremost, we have to secure our borders first before we can even have any discussion on anything else. And that is with a wall, with technology, whatever it takes. Sanctuary cities are an affront to rule of law. The reason why the United States is the world's reserve currency, when everything is chaotic around the globe, the reason why other nations will put their treasure into the United States is because we have a constitution that is sound and we have rule of law. Secondly, sanctuary cities are nothing more than a magnet for those who would come here illegally. So we must do everything in our power to end it. As for DACA, understand this and hear me now. Your dreams, the dreams of your children and my children will always take precedence over the dreams of a bunch of children of illegal, law-breaking immigrants.
Mr. Langerfeld.
I'd like to hear the question again because I want to hear it worded.
Yes, sir. Regarding immigration issues, please explain your detailed plans of protecting our borders, including the wall, your position on sanctuary cities, and your position on the administration's recent proposal to transition 1.8 million illegal residents to citizenship.
Number one, build the wall. Secure the border and get the house in order. If you can look across America today and you don't see that our house is ill and sick, something's wrong with you. Let me go back and apologize for what I said a while ago. I don't normally talk like that, but ladies, I apologize. As I said earlier, immigration is good. I believe in immigration, but I don't believe in illegal immigration. That kind of tells me something's wrong if it's ill, something's sick. No sanctuary cities, secure the border, get the house in order, register everyone that's here illegally. We need to know how many's here. If it's 700,000, I want to know. If it's 900,000, I want to know. And I'll stop.
Mr. Campbell.
All right, regarding the wall, that's $25 billion. The plans that have been floated that are not the wall, but fence completion, partial wall, increased technology with drones, increased personnel, we're looking between 1.4 billion and around 3 billion. I think that's much more fiscally conservative and in line with what we are about as conservatives here. I think 25 billion is too much, and I don't think that it's necessary to secure the southern border. I also don't believe that we can deport 13 million illegal immigrants. The cost alone is $130 billion, and it would take approximately 20 years. I don't think that's a possible answer either. I'm against sanctuary cities. I think the 1.8 million that Trump proposed was a bargaining chip to say, look, I offered this. I think that the end game is going to be 700,000, the original number of DACA, but it's only with the completion of the southern border secure. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
All right. Initially on the immigration issues, build the wall. That's it. We've got to get the border secure, whether it be a physical barrier or a combination of enhanced fencing or a combination of electronic monitoring and extra border patrol personnel. Without building that wall and securing the integrity of that border is going to be like trying to fill a strainer until it's full. It's got to be stopped. As far as sanctuary cities, I have a plan for sanctuary cities. Right now it's the administration against 1,000 sanctuary cities, some of them more severe than the others. Let's take that down to the state level, and it's 50 states. Every state should be responsible for any city that becomes a sanctuary city. So if you start withholding state funds for states who can't get controls of their cities, you'll start getting some more effective results. As far as the 1.8 million or whatever the number ends up being towards citizenship, I believe that we're in a conundrum there. Some of them have demonstrated that they are willing to adapt, and so you've got to analyze that better, and absolutely no more chain migration.
Ms. Pounds.
The state of Texas is doing things, and they're funding things that the federal government should be funding. Governor Abbott shouldn't have to go to our state legislature and try to get more funding for our border. Like these gentlemen said, we have to build a wall, we have to do it virtual, physical, whatever, give our border patrol agents everything that they need. When it comes to sanctuary cities, if they're not going to obey federal law, cut off their funding. Cut off every dollar that they get. I mean, at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to follow federal law. On the illegal immigrants that are here, this is what we'll say. We've had two opponents that are not here tonight that went on the record at the Dallas Morning News for legal status. I think my Romanian daughter-in-law, who's working through the process legally, they should not jump in front of her. They should go through the process, and if that means touching back to their country of origin, that's what needs to happen. But no legal status, no amnesty. Thank you.
Okay, any rebuttals or comments for your other fellow candidates?
Some of the money for the wall has already been appropriated and not spent. We can build the wall for less than $20 billion. Does that surprise you? If the want to is in America, we can do whatever we want to do. We just have people in Washington, D.C. that don't have the want to. And they get up there and they get misconceptions, and big money entices them, and crooked politicians stop them.
Yes, go ahead. Mr. Camp.
I believe in want to and the will to win and all those things, but I don't believe that these numbers are wrong. $25 billion is $25 billion no matter how you slice it, no matter how much you want it, no matter how much you believe in it, it's going to cost that much. And so if you are saying you're for the wall, an actual physical wall, you're for $25 billion being spent. That is not conservative, and that's not fiscally responsible.
Any others?
We are spending more on illegal immigration now. More than $100 billion spent on illegal immigration. Let's build the wall and stop spending all that money on illegal immigrants.
Ms. Pounds.
Let me just say, yeah, I agree with Charles in this aspect that the federal government's responsibility is to defend the people of the United States. And that is our biggest deal, is national security. We cannot continue to have drugs and terrorists and people that will cause harm to our people coming across our borders. That is a very important thing. So we have to cut other places, like the Department of Education or the IRS or different places, to find the money to do what the Constitution requires the federal government to do.
Mr. Williams.
I do support building the wall, and then a reformed immigration system. We need a well-defined immigration policy to where if anybody we have to send them back to their country of origin, they can either qualify to meet the qualifications to immigrate or not. And if anybody who has exhibited failure to adapt to our laws and rules, and they have criminal history, they need to be deported.
Mr. Dean.
We spend $30 billion in Afghanistan every year fighting a war that we don't know what the mission is anymore. And what's worse is we send our 18-year-old sons and daughters over there with no defined mission and no resolve, just for political reasons. We can fight ISIS still without having boots on the ground in Afghanistan and trying to build other people's countries. Let's start with ours.
Okay, moving on to our next question. Ken.
This is for everybody, starting with Mr. Wright. The Republican Party platform states, we support term limits for federal, judicial, and congressional offices, and statewide offices through 3 terms. 12 years maximum for any single office. What is your position on term limits?
I'm all for them. You all know that Senator Cruz introduced legislation to that effect last year. I was one of the strongest advocates within our staff for that, and you have my word that one of the first pieces of legislation that I will draft and I will solicit co-sponsors for are term limits. I believe what the founder said was true. We are servant leaders from the people. We go to Washington, do the work, and then come back and plant your crops. I'm a firm believer in that, and if we have to codify it through term limits, let's do it.
Mr. Lingerfeld?
I didn't decide about term limits here in the last 60 days or 90 days. I've been a believer in term limits for more than 40 years. I've worked in the Texas grassroots for more than 45 years. I'm a believer in term limits. I want the term limits on me and everybody else. Except when I become your congressman and they decide to make me Speaker of the House, I'll come back to you and ask you, will you give me one more term?
Mr. Campbell?
Yeah, I agree with Jason that term limits, this is something that I signed a pledge for if elected. you're to go to Washington for a time, you're not to go for a career. We have 3 that I can name off the top of my head who've been in Congress in some form for over 30 years. This has turned into a career and a cash cow for them. What I've signed on for is you have 3 terms as a representative and 2 terms as a U.S. Senator. And that's it. There's no additional time. There's no, let me try to do this. That's what you get. And if you can't accomplish what you wanted to, you go back into the private sector and you try to help in the ways that you can.
Mr. Williams?
I too support term limits, and I too have signed a pledge supporting the exact same thing as Danny has, 3 terms for congressional representatives and 2 terms for a maximum of 12 years for the Senate. The Constitution was designed with term limits in the executive branch, and I think the time we've evolved to where it is appropriate now for our congressional representatives. So I do support it.
This is going to sound funny, but currently we do have term limits in that you elect your representatives every 2 years. That is the reality. Our problem, I don't believe, is term limits. Our problem is getting our citizens involved and educated to do our civic duty. But at the end of the day, conceptually, I agree with the idea of term limits. I'm not sure how long it takes to mentor someone and to raise up leadership. We can't abandon folks without mentors or be able to accomplish what we went to Congress to do. So I'm not comfortable putting a time frame on that, but conceptually, yes. But at the end of the day, it's up to me and you to educate people and get them involved where they're actually here like us tonight. Thank you guys again for being here.
Mr. Dean?
You know, money makes the world go round. And if you have money, you're in charge. And if you don't, you don't. I think a congressman should serve the country. I think a congressman should live under the legislation that government produces in the form of owning a business and have to survive under these rules and laws that these congressmen create. So I do support term limits, and yeah, I think they should be there.
Does anybody have any rebuttal?
Not necessarily a rebuttal, but I'm asking for your vote on March 6th to be your congressman and go there and represent you in Washington, D.C. I will limit myself because I believe in term limits. I also signed the pledge, but I believed in it all my life.
I would like to believe that we live in a time like George Washington. He limited himself to 2 terms as president. We don't live in that time anymore. People, when they gain power, they want to keep power, just as Sam was saying. So in order for them not to keep power, you have to limit them. And I agree with Bunny. Yeah, you should definitely educate the population, but you can only do so much. Sometimes you have to be able to kick people out before they've been there too long.
Let me say one more thing. What you have on this stage, we've gotten to know each other very well, this group, because our other 2 folks don't show up. But the reality is we are not political politicians. We are just average citizens, small business owners, military folks that don't have to stay in Washington, D.C. They're actually giving up our life to do this, to save the republic. And that's really important for you to understand. I don't have to go to Washington, D.C. and stay there. I want to go make a difference and come home and run my company because Glonda's going to miss me if I go to Washington, D.C. So thank you.
I'd like to say that anyone who doesn't show for a candidate draw or come out and appear before you to answer the questions and look you in the eye and give you an honest opinion does not deserve your vote.
Any others? Okay, our next question goes to all the candidates, beginning with Mr. Lingerfeld. The Republican Party platform states, "We believe that all children should have access to quality education. We support the right to choose public, private, charter, or home education. We support the distribution of educational funds in a manner that they follow the student to any school, whether public, private, charter, or homeschool, through the means of tax exemptions and/or credits. What is your position on this plank in the platform, Mr. Lingerfeld?
I'm a retired teacher. I've taught in public school and private school. I'm a father of 3 sons and 3 daughters. The last 3 children that we had, 2 sons and a daughter, went to private school because we wanted to take them out of public school, because we didn't see the public school teaching them the way we thought they ought to be taught. I think parents deserve a choice. And some of that money needs to follow you. If you desire to put your children in a charter school or a private school, you ought to have access to it because it's your money in the first place.
Mr. Campbell.
So what I'm about to say is hinging on the fact that the Department of Education does exist, okay? Yes, I agree that there should be choice and there should be a voucher program, and that the money should follow the students wherever they go. If it's homeschooling, if it's private school, charter school, if they choose to go to a different public school. However, I'm for abolishing the Department of Education. That is an overreach at the federal level that never should have been enacted in the 1960s. This should be a state and local government issue, never should have been a federal government issue.
Mr. Williams.
But being in education myself, I do support education of all options. Public school, private school, charter school, homeschool. They're all great options, and there's no one mold that fits every family. As Danny has mentioned, the U.S. Department of Education, their reach into the state levels has got to go. Every individual state deserves to have their education designed by their educators. The curriculum for Texas should be designed by Texas and what's best for Texas children. As far as the school voucher system, I do not believe that our local tax dollars that are paid into our ISDs via property tax should go to a voucher system to go to private school. I've been a private school parent. That was my option. I paid for the tuition. Now, I do support tax credits or tax deductions similar to what college tuition would be on our tax returns. But as far as just an open voucher system, as an educator, many TRS members as well do not support vouchers. I do not.
Ms. Pounds.
I believe parents educate children more than anyone else. I'm a former homeschooling mom, had my kids in private school as well, because we made a choice to put our kids in Christian education and to educate them themselves. At the end of the day, I'm not for anything where federal control follows federal dollars. That's what you need to know. If anything, if money would follow a child and put regulations on that homeschool or that private school, I will absolutely not support it. I'm more of the vein that we need to take tax credits and tax deductions to help fund education. And at the end of the day, I believe what Danny says. I mean, the Department of Education needs to go away. It's all about local school boards and local control that helps our children the most. So as much as we can get back to the family unit and local control, the better.
Mr. Dean.
I own 15 properties in this district. I pay a lot of property tax. But what happens, you pay property tax for Canton ISD and Athens ISD in my case, it goes to Austin, and they don't give it all back to the school. And I'm all for, if you want to send your kids to private school, send them. If you want to homeschool them, you have every right to do so. But vouchers are not a good thing for our public schools, and I'm against them. And our teachers have to accept every student. We do Special Olympics down here at CrossFit Van Zandt. They can't turn those kids away. And they have to take everybody, so there's no accountability. And I know it's not popular with some of the Tea Party people, but that's just how I feel. So,
Mr. Ryan.
So the sad fact is, school choice already exists as long as you can afford it. And that's heartbreaking for kids that are stuck in inner cities that have no choice. They're in failing schools and there's no way out. So I absolutely believe in adding more competition and more choice at every turn. One of the things that we got into the most recent tax bill was to be able to use your 529 college savings plan to apply towards both homeschooling expenses as well as private school. This gives you a tax break whenever you decide to have your child get a Christian education, have a more quality education that is what's offered. So I'm all about putting competition in education, because it's not right that the only students and the only parents who have school choice are those who can afford it.
Okay, do we have any rebuttals, comments?
I would say if we had been electing the right people for the last 30 to 35 years and sending them to Washington to fairly, honestly, and appropriately represent us and your thoughts and your beliefs, we could have solved this problem with education a long time ago. We hear people say, bring it back to the local. Nobody does anything about it once they get up there. They make you big promises while they're here on the campaign trail, and they forget about you when they're elected. I won't.
Any others? Yes, Mr. Williams.
As was also mentioned up here, the U.S. Department of Education does have a vital role, which they have historically been initially designed for, and that is the college loan, student loan guarantee program. I believe that the U.S. Department, that is a vital service they do, and so they should be maintained with that as their primary objective. And also I think the 529 option, which is a designated savings plan for tuition, should be able to be used for private school choice or homeschool or any expense incurred for primary, secondary, or college level education.
Okay, next question, Brad.
Please signify by raising your hand if your primary residence was not within the boundaries of Congressional District 5 on October 30, 2017, the day before Jeb Hensarling announced his retirement. Was not. Would any of you candidates care to comment?
I lived in the 5th District for 16 years. I was one of Jeb's big activists and got redistricted out 4 years ago, and the day we filed was the day I bought a house a stinking mile and a half from my house to represent you well, because I know the 5th District of Texas more than anybody else, and I wasn't going to let any of my opponents use that against me. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment?
Sure, I do. So whenever I got recruited into this race, one of the first things I said was, you don't understand, my primary residence isn't inside of District 5. I do have a home in Wood County that's in the district. But the individual made a good point. The person that right now has a chance of getting into the runoff that's not here tonight lives and has lived in the district. So I took it upon myself to go, okay, I'll fight this fight to make sure we have a conservative that is living now in the district than a native who will be a liberal squish in Washington.
I moved to Congressional District 5 in 1987. Lived in the district when Pete Sessions was your congressman. Helped him get elected and re-elected over and over. Then when he went over to the 32nd District and Jeb Hensarling ran in 2002, I helped Jeb get elected. Funny thing happened in 2010 and 2011 as a way of saying thank you for your help. I was redistricted out of Congressional District 5, and I went out and measured it because I knew this was coming up. I lived 2,000 feet from District 5.
I feel your pain, Charles.
And I don't like it.
Okay, that concludes our...
One more response.
Oh, sorry, one more response.
As far as District 5, I was born and raised in Tyler. About 6 months before Representative Hensarling announced his retirement, one of my co-workers has had a house that he has 2 houses now and a mortgage, and I have been trying to buy this house that I subsequently acquired the rights to, which I'm currently renovating, which will be our primary residence. About 6 months prior to this, we didn't close on it until mid-December. So I will do that, but I have plowed and farmed my commercial hay farm and built a house in Henderson County in 2008. So, I mean, but that was not my homestead.
Mr. Campbell.
So I grew up in Seagoville, so I'm in Canton now, so don't hold that against me that I grew up in Seagoville. Graduated from Seagoville High School at 18, went to A&M, joined the military, and so for the last 6 years, my wife is from East Houston, and so we moved back to where she is from after I got out of the military. This is my home district, it's my old home district, And so if elected, I would move back into the 5th district.
Mr. Dean.
I'd just like to thank all you guys for coming to my hometown. And, First Monday it's a festival that goes on here. It's the world's largest flea market.
It's awesome.
And it's the weekend before the first Monday of the month. And this has really great shopping in here and out. And tell all your friends and family, because we need it. And give these guys a round of applause. Thank them for coming.
Can I say one more thing, Bob, on this subject? This proves
No, I'm sorry. I've got to stop it, but I get to say something. When we decided to ask this question, we believed that there were one or two. We did not know this situation. And just so everyone knows, legally, you do not need to be a resident of the congressional district to run for the seat. So, just so you know.
I remember when Congress passed that law. So,
okay, Charles.
plus my mom lives here in Van. So.
All right, that's it. Now we're going to have our closing statements, and each one will have 1 minute. The audience is welcome to applaud after each closing statement if you'd like. And we'll begin with Mr. Lingerfeld and work this way.
All right. I want you to know I took a photo of you a while ago because I wanted to go home tonight, back to Dallas, and brag on you to my wife. As I said earlier, I built my campaign on 4 pillars. I've always lived by these 4 pillars: experience, maturity, honesty, and integrity. All the people who know me and have known me through the years know that I live by those 4 principles, and I'm not ashamed of it. I put God first, my family, and my country in that order. That's going to be the order when I go to Washington to represent you. And I promise you, you can trust Charles Lingerfeld. Go to itrustcharles.com and you'll see that I'll never fail you.
I'm a 5th generation East Texan from Sulphur Springs. I'm the first member of my family to graduate from college. Now, I've been coming to First Monday so long, I was telling Sam, I still remember when the guy used to make sculptures out of wood with his chainsaw. And now I'm a grassroots activist. And I'll tell all of you right now, whether I win or whether I lose, and I've said this throughout this entire campaign, my identity will not be as Congressman Wright, and it won't be as failed candidate Wright. My identity was secured when I was 9 years old, and I made the decision to believe the truth of what happened for me on Calvary's cross over 2,000 years ago. I'm asking you to allow a fellow East Texan, a fellow lover of the Constitution, a fellow lover of liberty and freedom, to take our grassroots conservatism to the United States Congress and secure America's place as that shining city on a hill. Thank you.
Mr. Dean?
My wife and my 4-year-old son are in the audience, and my family's here tonight. A lot of my friends are here. I love this country. I've sacrificed a lot for it. And whatever we can do to make sure it's safe, to make sure it remains prosperous for our kids and our grandchildren is what we're going to do. When I think about a representative, I want somebody that's from my community. I want somebody that has a good education. I want somebody that's conservative and has a good head on their shoulders. I've been a leader my entire life, and I'll be a leader for you in Congress. Thank you.
Ms. Pounds?
Thank you, Sam, for your service, too. I'm Bunny Pounds, again, on the ballot. I'm the only person named Bunny on the ballot. I'm a wife and a mom, and I got in this race to protect liberty, to stand for our conservative values, and because I couldn't sleep or eat or not, because I've spent a decade of my life serving the 5th District of Texas, serving all of you, seeing your stories, reading your emails, and knowing your heart. And I knew that the current legislators that are in this race did not have a record of standing up for you and standing up for limited government. So I felt compelled that I need to get in this race. We need an executive leader that knows small business, that has been an entrepreneur, and that knows how to sign the front of paychecks, not just the back of the paychecks. We need someone that is a movement conservative, that you trust the conservative values because they fought in the trenches with you, and someone that will fight for limited government. And I have been mentored in that for 15 years, and I would love to serve you in the United States House and give up my life in that capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
As conservatives, most of the candidates up here, we've just talked about the same national conservative issues. I want to expand and talk about some things we haven't talked about in any of our other forums. One of my goals is to increase mental health resources for all the citizens, and especially for the veterans who are having the highest rate of suicide of any time in recorded history. I want to support and remove the restrictions off our law enforcement nationwide so they can better defend us against crime, local crimes, and the opioid crisis and narcotics. Those are real problems that affect all of us. Global spending. With my 18 years in the military, multiple deployments, not all of them were defense deployments or wartime. I went on some humanitarian missions. There's nothing wrong with feeding the world's starving children as long as America's starving children have been fed first. Fire, EMS, resources. 2/3 of our country is covered by volunteer services. I want to increase matching grants from FEMA to these volunteer services. I want to put public education back to the state control, and Obamacare. We've got to remove Obamacare, open market society, bring down prices, bring down deductibles, and increase coverages. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Well, I'm the outsider. I didn't use any political circle or any political office as a stepping stone to get to this point. Not at all, actually. I've served my country. I served it honorably. I've deployed. I led soldiers in combat. Like I said before, over 150 combat patrols in northern Iraq. I'm tired of big government, just like you are. I'm tired of the Republican big government. I'm tired of the Democratic big government. I'm for a smaller, limited scope government. I'm the one true conservative that's up on this stage. Like I said before, I have a bare bones approach to government. I'm also pro-life, pro-constitutional carry, pro-balanced budget, pro-term limits, pro-border security, pro-flat tax, pro-Fourth Amendment. FISA should never have occurred. I'm also here to abolish the Department of Education and the IRS. There's no reason that we should have all these huge scope government issues. I ask your vote on March 6th. Vote for Dana Campbell. Thank you.
Okay, let's give all these candidates a hand. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.